Hare Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Na Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jai Vishnu Pada Brahmasa Parivrattarya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Pada Brahmasa Parivrattarya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Shri Prabhupada. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Prema. Reading from Shri Prabhupada Leelamrita. Swami invites the hippies. Then Srila Prabhupada stood up, lifted his arms, and began to dance. He gestured for everyone to join him, and those who were still seated stood up and began dancing and chanting and swaying back and forth, following Prabhupada's gentle dance. Roger Siegel. The ballroom appeared as if it was a human field of wheat blowing in the wind. It produced a calm feeling in contrast to the Avalon ballroom atmosphere or Gayatri energies. The chanting of Hare Krishna continued for over an hour, and finally everyone was jumping, yelling, even crying and shouting. Someone placed a microphone before Srila Prabhupada, and his voice resounded strongly over the powerful sound system. The tempo quickened. Srila Prabhupada was perspiring profusely. Kirtananta insisted that the kirtan stop. Swamiji was too old for this, he said. It might be harmful, but the chanting continued, faster and faster, until the words of the mantra finally became indistinguishable amidst the amplified music and the chorus of thousands of voices. Then, suddenly it ended, and all that could be heard was the loud hum of the amplifier and Srila Prabhupada's voice ringing out, offering obeisances to his spiritual master. Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Srila Prabhupada made his way off stage through the heavy smoke and crowds and down the front stairs with Kirtananda and Ranchor close behind him. Ellen announced the next rock group. As Swamiji left the ballroom and the appreciative crowd behind, he commented, "This is no place for a brahmachari." Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Canto 4, Part 2, Chapter 29, Text 3. Yo vignata hitastasya purushasya shakeshvara yanna vignayate pumbe nama birva kriya gune. Yo vignata hitastasya purushasya shakeshvara yanna vignayate pumbe nama birva kriya gune. Yo vignata hitastasya purushasya shakeshvara yanna vignayate pumbe nama birva kriya gune. Yo vignata hitastasya purushasya shakeshvara yanna vignayate pumbe nama birva kriya gune. Yo vignata hitastasya purushasya shakeshvara yanna vignayate pumbe yanna vignay. Yo vignata hitastasya purushasya shakeshvara yanna vignayate pumbe nama virva kriya gune. Word for word. Yeah, he who, avignata, unknown, ahita, described, tasya, of him, purushasya, of the living entity, saka, the eternal friend, Ishvara, the master, yat, because, na, never, vignayate, is understood, pumbhi, by the living entities, namabhi, by names, va, or, kriya gune, by activities or qualities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The person I have described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and eternal friend of the living entity. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. Purport. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unknown to the conditioned soul, he is sometimes described in Vedic literatures as Nirakara, Avignata, or Avan Manasa Gochara. Actually, it is a fact that the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be perceived by material senses as far as his name, as far as his form, name, quality, pastimes, or paraphernalia are concerned. However, when one is spiritually advanced, one can understand the name, form, qualities, pastimes, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1855. Bhaktyamam avijhanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. One can understand in truth the Supreme Personality of Godhead only when one is engaged in devotional service. Ordinary persons engaged in pious and impious activities cannot understand the form, name, and activities of the Lord. The devotee, however, can know the personality of Godhead in many respects. He can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that his address is Goloka Vrindavan, and that his activities are all spiritual. Because the Lord's form and activities cannot be understood by materialistic people, he is described by Sastras as Nirakara, that is one whose form cannot be ascertained by materialistic person. This does not mean that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no form. It means that it is not understood by the karmis or fruitive actors. His form is described in Brahma Samhita as Satchit Ananda Vigraha, as confirmed by Padma Purana. Atashi Krishna Namadi Nama Vedgrahim Indre Sevan Moke Hi Jivada Swayameva Sprati Adha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by utilizing the blunt material senses. However, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees being pleased with them because of their transcendental living service rendered to him. Since the name, form, qualities, and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, cannot be understood by the material senses, he is also called Adokshaja, meaning beyond sense perception. When the senses are purified by devotional activity, the devotee understands everything about the Lord by the Lord's grace. In this verse, the words Pumbir, Namabir, Va, Kriya, Gune are especially significant because God, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has many names, activities, and qualities, although none of them are material. Despite the fact that all these names, activities, and pastimes are mentioned in the Shastras and understood by the devotees, the karmis, fruitive laborers, cannot understand them, nor can the jnanis, mental speculators, understand them. Although there are thousands of names of Lord Vishnu, the karmis and jnanis intermingle the names of the Supreme Godhead with the names of demigods and human beings. Because they cannot understand the actual name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they take for granted that any name can be accepted. They believe that since the Absolute Truth is impersonal, they can call him by any name. Otherwise, they maintain he has no name. This is not a fact. Here it is clearly stated, Namavid va Kriya Gune. The Lord has specific names such as Rama, Krishna, Govinda, Narayan, Vishnu, and Adokshaja. There are indeed many names, but the conditioned soul cannot understand them. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshuramiltam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Nadati Svapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamshta Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Shah. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Sapta Kanchini Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishnabhanustate Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Krishna Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नाम नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रसारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाठाचार्य मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगं लंघायतिर्गिरं यकृपात्माहं वन्दे श्रीगुरोदिनतारिणं यस्य प्रसादः भगवत्प्रसादः यस्य प्रसादनगति कृतोऽपि ध्यायं स्तुवं तस्य यस्य श्रीसन्ध्यं वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम्. I'll just read the translation again. The person I have described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master, an eternal friend of the living entity. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or quality, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. So here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes the Supreme Personality of Godhead in three different names. He calls them Avignata, Avanmanasa Gochara, and Nirakara. So it explained that Avignata means the unknown one. Avanmanasa Gochara means beyond the reach of our mental speculation. And Nirakara means one whose form cannot be ascertained by a materialistic person. So the Supreme Personality of God is described by these names because our material senses cannot understand him. Our material senses cannot understand him because we are still conditioned soul. Because we are, Krishna says, Namam, Dushkritina Muda, Prabhadyante Naradama. So those who are fools, Muda, those are miscreants, Dushkritina, those are Naradama, those who are lowest of mankind, and those who are Maya Prahita Jnana, those whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, they cannot understand the Supreme Personality of God. Krishna says those people don't come to him. And factually, because they cannot understand the Lord, they foolishly declare, as Krishna says, Avajananti mamodam, anashantanamashritam, param bhava majhanato mam bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that. Because these fools, miscreants, because they cannot understand God, their inability to understand God, they foolishly declare that I am God, you are God. Or even worse, they say God is dead. Or those who are conditioned, they try to make a business out of it. They say, I'll pay me $35 and I'll give you a mantra. You can become God in a week. But actually, those are all foolishness. There's one Srila Prabhupada in the early days. In the early days, Prabhupada didn't have a fixed residence. So once he was invited by this yogi called Dr. Mishra. And so he was a yogi who preached about being God. He is God. He thinks he is God. And he says by practicing yogic asanas, one can become God too. So Srila Prabhupada stayed at his ashram. Srila Prabhupada gave lectures. Of course, the lectures were how we're not God and Krishna is God. And Dr. Mishra said, Swamiji, maybe don't say that, because I am God, you're also God. We're all God. But Prabhupada didn't believe that. So once Prabhupada in his morning walk, he goes on a morning walk. And he's walking past the ashram and he hears some groaning. He's like, oh. And he wonders what's happening. So he goes inside the room. And he sees Dr. Mishra. He's clutching his jaw and he's screaming in pain. And he's telling Prabhupada, call the dentist, I have a toothache. And Srila Prabhupada says, what? God has a toothache? God needs a dentist? Since when did God depend on others? God is, Prabhupada says another point, he says, God is the supreme being. He's the supreme being. And then he asked this person who said he was God, he asked this person, what does supreme being mean? What does supreme mean? Supreme means highest authority. Now, are you highest authority? Does the highest authority succumb to a toothache? Does the highest authority depend on others, a dentist, to relieve his material pain? That's not God. So Prabhupada destroys the concept that I am God or you're God. But just because you're not God and I'm not God does not mean there's not a God. So there is a God, and this is a nice story. It's to do with Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton and his friend. His friend didn't believe in a superior intelligence. He didn't believe in a superior designer. Whereas Isaac Newton did believe in some sort of higher intelligence. So to convince his friend Isaac, he created this very nice machine. It was a solar system, the sun and different planets revolving around the sun. And he had a mechanism where he could make it move. And so he showed his friend that. And his friend was amazed. He said, oh, wow, it's very nice. And then his next question was, who made it? And Isaac said, oh, no one made it. It just appeared. And his friend didn't believe that. He said, no, someone must have made it. Who made it? This conversation kept going on until finally Isaac pointed out, just this small machine you think there's a creator. What about this whole material universe? Everything, nature is working wonderfully. Animals don't have to go out 9 to 5 work every day. Elephants, they're not starving. They have sufficient food. So many animals are not starving of food. They're not having a lack of food, lack of resources. So Krishna is maintaining them. So material nature is such a great machine. Krishna says, Ishvaras sarvabhutanam hridesharinatashti brahmayan sarvabhutani yantaradhani maya. We're seated on this machine made of material nature. This supreme machine is created by a supreme being, and that supreme being is said to be Krishna, God. But the problem is, not everyone can fully understand that, because not everyone can recognize that. So the question is, how do we recognize? The Srila Prabhupada gives an example of a mechanic. If you pop the hood up of a car, you can see there's many pipes, tanks, different machinery. And if you put someone who has a mechanical degree, you can just look at that and you can see what is happening. You can see this is working this way, energy is produced, the pistons are moving. But if you put someone with no knowledge of engineering, no knowledge of mechanics, what will he see? He'll just see pipes. He'll just see normal material matter. So similarly, in Mahabharata, Krishna was on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Millions of people were there, but how many actually knew that he was God? How many actually understood that he was God and acted on that understanding? There's hardly any. The Pandavas, Bhishmadev. So Krishna is not known to those who don't want to know him. But how do we qualify ourselves to know Krishna? How do we qualify ourselves to understand Krishna? And Krishna says to Arjuna, Bhakto sime sakareti rahasyam hi etad uttamam. Because you're my bhakta, because you're my devotee, and because you're my saka, you're my friend, I give you this knowledge. So one has to be the devotee of the Supreme Personality of God in Krishna. One has to be a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Krishna will give us the understanding. Dami buddhi yogantam yena mam upayantite. So to those who are constantly devoted to serving Krishna with love, Krishna will give them the understanding. Krishna will give them the understanding that he says, he will give the understanding about the name, form, qualities, pastimes, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord. So Krishna can give all this. All we have to do is perform devotional service. It is to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, to those who are rendering devotional service to the Lord. Bhakti mama vichanati yavanyascha asmi tatvata. One can understand in truth the Supreme Personality of Godhead only when one is engaged in devotional service. So we have to engage in devotional service. And by following the footsteps of our previous acharyas, Srila Rupa Goswami, he gives the definition of devotional service. He says, Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tadparadvina nirmalam rishikesha rishikena sevanam bhakti ruchite. Bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is free from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. The problem is now with us is that our senses are materially contaminated. We see all sense objects, every material creation, we see that it is to be enjoyed by our senses. We think, I'm the Lord of all I survey, I'm the Lord of all that be. Everything is for my enjoyment. And this is due to the heart disease called kama, lust. Originally, all spirit souls are meant to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all the living entities have this inherent Krishna prema in them, this inherent tendency to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we tell Krishna, why should you enjoy? I want to enjoy. I want to be Ishvara. I want to be Purusha. I want to be the controller. So Krishna, he is a loving father. He says, okay, fine, this material world is for you. And we try to transform that love for Krishna. We try to transform that love into love for material objects, for this material nature. And so we think everything is for the enjoyment of our senses. But actually, the futility of sense gratification is very astounding. See, all of us, it's a nice example that this material body is like a sponge dipped in water. In the childhood and youth of the material body, you squeeze the sponge and the water flows very nicely. That's compared to sense enjoyment. In the youth and childhood, you can enjoy your senses unlimitedly. And then by squeezing the sponge and the water is dripping, you think this is perfection. This will continue going on. There will be no end. But sooner or later, you realize that water is not flowing. Then what do? Because you're addicted to that, because you're used to that water flowing out of the sponge, you spend the rest of your life wringing the sponge this way, pinching this corner, squeezing it as much as you can, just to get that small drop of water out. That is material life now. We enjoy our senses, the childhood and youth, unlimitedly. We think we'll go on enjoying forever. We think everything is eternal. But factually, it will end very, very soon. And what do? We try to look for other options of sense enjoyment. And nowadays, it's common that if you keep finding the sense enjoyment and you can't find it, what do? You end up on a therapist's couch. You read different psychology books. But those are not solutions. These are material problems. You're trying to gratify your senses. Those are material problems. Going to a psychiatrist, a therapist, that's just material solutions. It's like a carpet. If a carpet has an air bubble in it, you try to press down the air bubble just moves to another part. So similarly, material problems get a material solution. And inherently, both are temporary. Therefore, the solution is temporary, the problem is temporary. The solution will work for the problem, another problem will arise, another solution is made, but another problem arises, and it's a whole cycle. And that is what the world is dealing with today. We think that this material world is eternal. We think this is all that is be. But factually, we're just being slaves of our senses. The senses direct us to so many different things, to so many different objects. And because inherently our love is meant for Krishna, we're by nature anandamaya bhyasa. We're pleasure-seeking living entities. And our pleasure can only be fully reciprocated with the Supreme Lord, because he is known as Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. He's an embodiment of all bliss. He's called Rama, reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna, the epitome of all bliss. So if we try to take our pleasure-seeking nature and try to put it into material nature, and therefore we get confused. We try the mind given by Maya Devi. The mind has two functions. It's called avirodha priti and virodha yukta krodha. First, the mind makes us so unnecessarily attached to material nature. Very, very attached. We get so attached to material nature, we think we're in an illusion. We think this is all that we, this is everything. This is my everything. This is my atmiya. This is my life and soul. This is all I want. And then the second function of the mind, virodha yukta krodha, means frustration arising from this dissatisfaction of material objects. Because the mind first attaches and then it realizes it's not fully satisfying. It's not fully satisfying me. And then we get frustrated because we still look at material solutions for the material world. Inherently, all sense gratification is under the control of the mind. You see, in a husband and wife, the husband is not satisfied with the wife. He's not happy with the wife. What does the wife have to offer to the husband? The wife offers to the husband sex and palatable dishes. Other than that, the wife doesn't give any happiness to the husband. The husband is only happy because of the wife, because in his mind, he feels that subtle sense gratification that, oh, I got a wife, I got a woman, she's dependent on me, she's chaste, she's mine. And then you think, I am Krishna, I am the enjoyer, I am the Supreme Lord, I'm the Supreme Husband. And that's how the husbands get enjoyment. And the woman, they don't find happiness in the man. They find happiness in the man fulfilling their desires. As long as the man fulfills their desires, the woman will reciprocate. And sometimes you see like women take sacrifices for the desires of men. They compromise with the man. But that is just further illusion, because these are all Maya's post-dated checks. She promises all the living entities, oh, if you just wait a bit, if you try this way, maybe it was not meant to be, try this way, maybe change something about you. So Maya keeps giving these post-dated checks that if so, perhaps, then maybe if you do it this way, you'll get enjoyment. And for our whole life, we're succumbing to Maya's instructions. We think the post-dated checks are true. We think if we follow what she's saying, we'll get some enjoyment. But factually, that is all nonsense. That is all illusion of Maya. That is her nature. That is a duty, because Krishna has given her that service. She keeps deluding us to think that this material nature is full of pleasure. She deludes us to think that this is eternal, but factually it is not eternal. This whole material world is temporary, and it's full of miseries. It's filled with birth, death, old age, and disease. Why Maya Devi is so expert that she puts us into illusion to think that, no, it's not all that it seems. No, the government says, the world says, don't be so pessimistic. Don't look at all these dark sides. Focus on the good. But what is there good? These are the truth. These are the facts. And this is what Prabhupada has given us. So it is amazing, even though that we know that our senses cannot be, we know our senses theoretically cannot be satisfied in the material world. We know from personal experience, we can see that. We can see our senses are not fully satisfied. You see, we're always hankering for something, and we're always lamenting. We're always lamenting over the past, because the mind makes us think that the past was so great. It was the epitome of all sense pleasure. But if we actually analyze our past, there was no epitome of sense pleasure. The mind just keeps making us think that it's the best. But factually, it isn't. And those who know this, those who say, all right, you're right, sense gratification is not the way. You're right, we're pleasure-seeking potencies. We should go to Krishna. But yet, even though we know that, yet we still continue material activity. But why? Because of Maya Devi. She still brings us back. Even though we have some sort of desire to get out of this material world, Maya Devi brings us back. And it's not her fault, it is her duty. We were first Bahirmukha. First we shun away from Krishna. We said we should be enjoyer. And then we go into this material world. We spend innumerable lives in all 8.4 million species of lives. We go through each life thinking that we're the enjoyer. We go through each life thinking that this community, these relationships, these sense objects around me, they can give me pleasure. They can love me. I can love them fully. They can be mine and I can be theirs. Millions and millions of lives we go through this. And yet again, Krishna checks our desires. We see so many bad things happen to us in life. So many bad things happen to other people in life. But why? Because Krishna, all he's doing is just reminding us, he's looking for our reciprocatory love. Krishna is so kind. He's saying, you won't be happy in this material world. By nature, your constitutional position is to serve me. By serving me, you will feel more bliss than me, actually. So therefore, please serve me. Please come to me. Please look this way. But what do? We say, no, there's still some sort of desire in us. There's still some sort of inherent thought, seed of desire in us that we think still this material nature can offer something. Even though we know all the facts that the sense gratification is not the goal of life. We know that our senses cannot be fully satisfied in this material world. Still, there's a small desire in all of us that maybe, just maybe, there could be something in this material world that I could still enjoy. And this is all Maya's doing. Prabhupada gives us an example that imagine you're sitting in this crowded bus or a crowded train. You're sitting on a 3-seater and 2 people are sitting there. And then you see a man coming in. You see him looking around fervently. And then he makes eye contact with you and he notices the empty spot. Then he walks slowly up to you. And it's a bit awkward, so you look away. And then he comes right up to you, looks you in the eye. And then you give a small curt nod and a smile. And you move sideways and let him sit down. And a few minutes later, a child walks in. This child is looking around and finally he sees his father, who is the man that just sat next to you. And children, he just runs to the father and he squeezes in whatever space he has got. So now you're squished against the wall. And then you see another child come in, and then another child come in. And slowly the whole seat is full and you're really like in a tight space. And then to top it all off, this very chubby fat wife comes in and she tries to squeeze in the seat and immediately you get up and walk away. Prabhupada says that is Maya. You give her 1 inch and she'll find some way or another to kick you out. Some way or another, your desires to get out of this material world, but Maya comes in. Some way or another, some small way she comes in. And immediately you don't feel like going back to God. Your desire is not strong enough. You lose determination, you lose enthusiasm. So Maya is so strong. She's Krishna's energy. Devi Esha Gunamaya Maya Tarataya. She's Krishna's divine energy. And because of her, it seems next to impossible to control the senses. How can we even dream of controlling the senses? She's so strong. She's Krishna's energy. We're just small, separated parts of Krishna. Mamevamsa Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. We're just small, infinitesimal parts of Krishna. And she's Krishna's Sakti Tattva. She's very strong. She's Krishna's divine energy. How do we do it? Even Arjuna is a devotee of the Lord. He's the friend of the Lord. He's someone so great he can embrace Krishna. He says joking words with Krishna. Krishna himself drives Arjuna's chariot. And that Arjuna, he's saying, the mind is harder to control than the wind. He says the mind is so strong, so turbulent, so obstinate, and so restless. So what hope is there for us to control the mind? It seems almost impossible. It seems almost there's no hope of coming out of this cycle of this material world. First of all, our senses are so strong. Our senses are so strong. Why? Because Maya is influencing them. Because Maya is influencing us. We think we're the body. We think, aham mameti. This is my body. This is my home. This is my Janmastan. These are my family. These are my dependents. This is my nation. We start identifying with all this. And it's so hard to come back from that. We turned away from Krishna, and it's so hard to turn towards Krishna again. So how do we do this? How can we overcome this material energy? That's why Krishna says, Devi Yeshu Kunamai Mamadurateya So Krishna says, just by surrendering onto me, by surrendering onto Krishna, one can cross this divine energy of his. And actually, Krishna is so kind. We turn away from Krishna. We shun Krishna away, yet Krishna does not give up on us. We can say, how is Krishna so kind? He only comes to this world for 125 years. He displays some transcendental leelas in Vrindavan, goes to Dwaraka, enacts many different pastimes, pleases devotees, and then he just leaves. Same thing with Mahaprabhu. He comes down for 48 years. He spreads the holy name only in India, and then he leaves. So how can you say Krishna is kind? How can you say Gauranga Mahaprabhu is kind? Because this is said by Gaur Govinda Maharaj that Krishna is so kind because when he leaves this material world, he leaves one thing behind. He leaves his Kripa Leela. And his Kripa Leela constitutes of his Vigraha, his form, his name, his Katha, his pastimes, and of course, his Bhakta. Krishna leaves all of this behind to bring us back to Godhead. By his Vigraha, his form, Shri Radha Giridhari, the Gaur Nitai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. By his name is chanted incessantly all over the world. By the holy name, Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasavika. This holy name is Chintamani, can fulfill all our desires. Actually, the Lord himself, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is glorifying the holy name. He is saying, Nam Namakari Bahudani Risala Sakis, Tatra Pitani Matasparani Makalaha, Etadashi Tava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi, Durdeva Medasham Yajinara. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benedictions to living entities. And thus you have hundreds and millions of transcendental names like Krishna and Govinda, and you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, you are so kind that you enable us to easily approach you by your holy name. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. So this is the mercy of Krishna, that he leaves the holy name. And of course, he leaves his pastimes in the form of Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, different Puranas. And lastly, he leaves his Bhakta. And this Bhakta is very, very special. Srila Prabhupada says in Nectar of Instruction, he says, I'll read it out. One can be gradually elevated to the standard of real knowledge or Krishna consciousness by practicing austerity and celibacy, brahmacharya, by controlling the mind, by controlling the senses, by giving up one's possessions in charity, by being avowedly truthful, by keeping clean, and by practicing yoga asanas. However, if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a pure devotee, he can easily surpass all practices for controlling the mind by the mystic yoga process, simply by following the regulated principles of Krishna consciousness, refraining from illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, and by engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master. This is easy process being recommended by Srila Rupa Goswami. So all we have to do to get out of this material nature is to serve the Supreme Lord in devotional service under the order of the spiritual master. And to do that is not so easy. To follow the order of the spiritual master is not so easy. It requires one to be very, very sincere and serious. Only these two qualifications are needed, sincere and serious. No other qualification matters. No other qualification holds a candle to this flame. By sincere and serious, all qualifications are kicked out. Jnana, vairagya, having money, caste, creed, material education, all these do not matter as long as one is sincere and serious. So one should be very sincere and serious. But how can one be sincere and serious? This question was asked to Srila Prabhupada. One person asked, how can one be serious when one is frivolous? And Srila Prabhupada replies, he says, seriousness. If you become serious, you develop seriousness. If you are fickle, how can you develop seriousness? Therefore, the injunction is, Yasya Prasada, Bhagavad Prasada. We should be very serious to imbibe the orders of the spiritual master. Then you are serious. If you think the spiritual master is a man like me, why shall I follow his instructions so strictly? Then you are not serious. Then what is the use of being initiated? So one should be very strictly and seriously follow the orders of the spiritual master. To understand, like the purport, it says, to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to render devotional service. Devotional service is Anukulyena Krishna Anushilina Bhaktirucha. So one is to render favorable devotional service to the Lord. But what is favorable for the Lord? God is a person. Krishna has a personality. What does he like? What is favorable to him? Only the spiritual master can tell. Only those who are dear to Krishna can tell. Those are Gaura Priyajana. Those are dear to Gauranga Mahaprabhu. They can tell what Krishna would like from us. And all we have to do is follow the order and serve Krishna. By following the order and serving Krishna, we engage in pure devotional service. By engaging in pure devotional service, we experience a joyful mode of life. Brahma Buddha Prasannatma. Nasochiti Nagangshati. We don't lament, we don't hanker. Samasarveshu Bhuteshu. We are equally disposed to all living beings. In such a transcendental state, by following the order of the spiritual master, we can render pure devotional service to the Lord. And slowly, by this practice, this Raga Nuga Sadhana Bhakti, by practicing this pure devotion, this loving service to the Lord, slowly we'll become perfect. And slowly we'll achieve that state of constantly rendering loving service to the Lord. So by serving the Lord constantly in loving devotion, He will give us the understanding by which we can come to Him. He will give us the understanding so we can understand the name, form, qualities, pastimes, and paraphernalia of the Lord. And then at the end of this life, we can go back to Godhead. And so this is the opportunity given by Prabhupada. This is the opportunity given by ISKCON. The opportunity is knocking on the door. We don't have to do much. We don't have to give up whatever we're doing. We do not have to give up our position in material society. Prabhupada says we don't ask you to give up anything. We just ask you to develop love of Godhead. The supreme religion is one that teaches devotional service to the Lord that is uninterrupted and unmotivated. That is all one has to develop. One just has to love God. And Prabhupada gives us this ISKCON movement. And all we have to do is just chant Hare Krishna, take prasad, and associate with devotees. That's all there is. That is all there is to devotional service, because everything is inherent in this three principles: chanting Hare Krishna and associating with Vaishnavas. Just by following these, we can go back to Godhead very, very quickly. We can control our senses very, very quickly. Maya cannot do anything to us if we're in the association of pure devotees and chanting Hare Krishna. That's all there is to devotional service. And this is given by Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. So it is up to us to take this opportunity. Maya is very strong. It influences us. We lose our determination, we lose our enthusiasm, we lose our drive. But still, we know that one day, one day, if we still continue to chant Hare Krishna, we still continue to associate with devotees, slowly the desire to enjoy will fade away. And then we'll become perfect. We can render pure devotional service to the Lord. We can finally feel that love being reciprocated fully. We can finally feel that bliss. Says, Ananda Bodhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnam Vadaswadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Paramajaya. So this chanting of the holy name is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious for. That is the Supreme Lord. That is the chanting of the holy name. It can give us the nectar for which we're always tasting. And slowly by this practice, to control the senses requires practice and renunciation. But slowly by this practice of chanting Hare Krishna, associating with devotees, following the order of the spiritual master under the shelter of ISKCON, we can control our senses. We can come to the mode of goodness. We can go to the mode of pure goodness. We can relish pure devotional service to the Lord. And then finally, we can go back to Godhead. We can play with Krishna. We can go on picnics with Krishna. We can hear Krishna's flute. We can see the different residents of Vrindavan. You can see when Krishna comes back from the forest at dusk, you can see Krishna in his yellow kurta, caked with the dust of Vrindavan, raised by the cow's footprints. All this is available. Don't think that this is all myth. These are not stories. Krishna is actually there in Vrindavan, and Krishna is waiting for us to come back. And therefore, Prabhupada, by his mercy, he's bringing us. All we have to do is follow Srila Prabhupada, follow the order of our spiritual master, and we can become perfect and go back to Godhead. Thank you. Hare Krishna. If there's any questions or comments. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. I go with a Sita